friends. I'm your host, Dr. Dave Layton, and thank you for joining me in our journey to hope. It is my desire through this podcast to bring you information about how to discover, sustain, or perhaps regain hope. In this episode, I'm speaking with Rene Whitt. Now, Rene has a wonderful story to share with us about how she is bringing hope to a very special young lady. Rene will be sharing that story with us. And by the way, Rene also happens to be my niece. Hello, Rene.
Hello.
Well, before we get into your story about hope and bringing that hope to someone, please share with us a little bit about yourself.
I am, like you said, I am your niece. You and my Aunt Lynn are married. That's my mom's sister. And so I've known you for, 45 years now, I guess. And I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I am married to a high school math teacher. I am the mother of one child. She is almost 14 years old.
Wow.
And her name is Tylee.
Yeah, I did not know that Tylee was 14.
Yes, she'll be 14 in April. It still is tugging on my heartstrings that she's old enough to even be a teenager, much less 14.
Okay. Well, that's great. Well, I've got some questions that I want to ask you about in relation to bringing hope to Tylee. And tell us a little bit about Tylee, by the way.
So Tylee is, like I said, she's almost 14 years old. She was born with Down syndrome, and she was also in foster care for the first almost 3 years of her life. We just celebrated on March 17th that we have had her for 11 years. And she lived with a wonderful family when she was born up until we got her. And so she was a very lucky child in the system, and that's not always the case, but we still are in contact with them. They're kind of like honorary grandparents for her, but she had for a child in the foster care system and with Down syndrome, she had a really great start to her life. So she is full of sass but also full of love, and she is very spirited. She gets very excited about dance parties, and she also gets very excited about popcorn. But then she, on the reverse side of it, she gets really mad about having to pick up her clothes and having to follow rules. So she's, in a lot of ways, she's like your typical 14-year-old, but she also she beats her own drum, that's for sure.
Yeah. One thing that I've always noticed about her is that she has a very inquisitive mind. She's always exploring. And,
yes, she is.
That.
She is very curious about life and how things work, sometimes to a fault because she doesn't realize how destructive she is. So she gets inquisitive about something and ends up tearing up a brand new toy just because she wants to know how it works. And I'm like,
okay.
That's not okay. But, she does, she asks a lot of questions. She wants to know why things happen. And there are definitely the circumstances where we do have to explain the same thing over and over and over again for her to understand it. But, until she gets it, we just try to continue to re-explain it until she understands it on her terms. So. Okay.
Well, as you said, that sounds like a lot of typical young teenagers.
Yes.
As they're making their way in the world. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, you've had to face some unique challenges. What do you feel are some of the biggest challenges that you face raising a child with Down syndrome?
So when she was younger, being that she was from foster care, there are a lot of kids that have Down syndrome have health problems. She is one of those kids. She was born with a congenital heart defect. She had open heart surgery at 4 months old. And so we follow up with health professionals every year. And so one of the things early on was they would ask about her medical history, her family's medical history. And I would just have to say, I don't know, because we
Yeah.
didn't get that information when we adopted her.
Okay.
So that was kind of, when she was younger, that was kind of a challenge. You know, another thing with them is that most children with Down syndrome do have a speech delay. Some of them are nonverbal. Tylee's very verbal. She does, it's very rare that she's not talking. But it is, when they're, especially when they're younger, very challenging to try to decipher what it is they're trying to say. And just like any child who is learning how to talk and how to communicate, they get frustrated whenever you don't understand that. So there were a lot of days where she would just be angry because she couldn't get across, you know, what she was wanting you to understand. And so we just kind of had to learn some different ways to get her to communicate while still encouraging her to, you know, try to form words, even though they weren't always successful. She's always had, when your child has special needs, you qualify to get through the state or through the school system early childhood intervention. So when she was just a few months old, she started getting speech therapy. And I know that sounds silly to get speech therapy at like 5 or 6 months old, but it's almost like a prerequisite to speech therapy. They start with some
Okay.
different skills, muscle building activities and things like that. So, you know, it's something where it has been something that's always been a part of her life since she was very, very young. So speech communication delay has been probably one of the most challenging things about bringing her up, just because it really never goes away. There are still, even at 13 or 14 years old, there are still things that she doesn't understand how to express. And so it is still a challenge on how to get her to either say a word. She may type it out on her tablet or spell it out. She has an app on her tablet that she can draw. So sometimes she'll try to draw the word. And so it's having those resources is great, but it still is kind of a challenge just to have a standard conversation with her and get her point across.
Okay. Did you have to have any special training or classes to attend to help you,
No,
work with Tylee?
our situation is a little different than people who have children that are born to them that have Down syndrome. Some of them will get like a prenatal diagnosis. Some of them will take advantage of some resources to try to learn about Down syndrome. The thing is, it's such a large spectrum. And, you know, not every Down syndrome child is going to be the same. Some of them will communicate just fine. Some of them will not have any trouble learning how to walk. Some of them are nonverbal. Some of them don't walk until they're 5 years old, or they may never walk. So it's hard to put in a box like all the descriptors of Down syndrome. So it's hard to take a course or, you know, have
Okay.
any special training specifically because of that, because it can vary so much.
Well,
So the kind of things that you're taught about when you
mhm.
find out about a diagnosis of Down syndrome is just, you know, things to look out for, things to be aware of. You know, some of them are going to have trouble, like weaker lungs is something that's common. Honestly, leukemia is something that is common with Down syndrome. So it's just things that just to be cognizant of as a parent while they're growing up. If you notice that they're really lethargic and they're getting a lot of bruises or they're not eating a lot, you know, make sure you take them to the doctor right away. So it's just something like that to be aware of. And so there is some degree of information that you can get from different resources, a doctor or, you know, a specialist. There's the Down syndrome, National Down Syndrome Society, is NDSS. They have a ton of resources on their website. And, you know, it's one place that anybody that I meet who has a new baby that has Down syndrome, I point them to that website because there are so many resources there.
What is the
Um,
name of that website again? National.
uh, Yes, it's NDSS. It's National Down Syndrome Society.
Okay. I want to put some of that information in the write-up about this so folks would have a
Right.
resource to go to. Yeah, and again, some of these questions I'm asking are coming because I've not been around a Down syndrome child or family very often, and so we just don't know these things, and so I appreciate you sharing those with me. Well, I understand there's a lot of challenges, but I know too I have seen some rewards for having a child with Down syndrome, some rewards that you've had from parenting Tylee. We've had as family with her. We've seen her, and she is really good about bringing a smile to your face. So share with us, please, some of the more rewarding aspects of parenting Tylee.
Yes, definitely. She has the most joyful attitude. I mean,
Yes.
granted, like I said before, she's full of sass and she is full of attitude, but she also, um, I think she also has the ability to sense other people's feelings. Um, Maybe what other people, whenever someone else is sad or if they just need a smile or a hug. I mean, so she just has this intuition that she singles out people that she feels like need her joy. And it is amazing to watch. And because we've been watching it for 11 years, but it also, I think we also get a little bit callous to it because we, it doesn't happen, we don't notice it happening as often just because it is life with Tylee. That's just how she operates. Other people see her do that. People at church, will notice that she goes up to someone and gives them a hug and it just completely changes their attitude. You can take the grumpiest old person who is having just a tough day, a hard time getting around, or, just not having a great day. She'll go up to him, talk to him, give him a hug, a high five, and they will just melt. It just changes their attitude. And that is probably one of my absolute favorite things about her is that she doesn't look at a person and see someone that the world uh, would discourage her from loving. She just sees somebody that is a potential friend or,
Okay.
potential somebody that needs her joy. It's something I appreciate about her is just that pure spirit. She doesn't have misconceptions of that person is dirty or that person is, looks like they haven't had a shower or, they might be homeless. They mean like things that the typical world usually shies away from. She has no reservations
Okay.
about approaching those people.
Well, I remember one day. Now I don't know if I was being grumpy. I thought I was just being me. But one day we were visiting at your mom and dad's, and you and Tylee were there, and I remember right before we were getting ready to leave, Tylee came over and gave me a hug, and you were absolutely right. That girl owned me at that point.
She does.
We,
Yes. It happens very quickly and very easily. Like people will just, they'll, and a lot of times out in public, even, I think people have an automatic response to seeing someone with Down syndrome and they almost give you like a pity look, like a look of
uh-huh.
you poor thing, that frustrates me because there's absolutely nothing to feel sorry for. There's nothing to pity us about because we're just raising our kid. Like she is so much fun and she's such a joy that there's just nothing to feel sorry for us for.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, a lot of times people will make eye contact with her or see her and they'll just grin at us. And if she sees that, she thinks that's a friend. So there are times in public where, even at the gas station, this happened not too long ago. She loves to help me pump gas. And there was a gentleman that was across from us who saw her pumping gas and he came over and he's like, can I just give you a high five? And she just reached over and gave him a high five, gave him a hug, introduced herself. And he was like, she just absolutely made my day. He's like, I just wanted to say that she was doing a great job pumping gas, but I didn't know how much I needed that, and it's just, she just immediately thinks that, that was a friend. And at first I was a little leery of that happening because I was like, oh, do we need to instill some stranger danger in her? But at the same time, there are very few circumstances where she is not in the presence of some adult. And so I would rather her have that radical love for others than to try to stifle that to a point where she has fear of others. It's a judgment call, but
Sure.
for me, I feel like that is her ministry, in a way, is just relentlessly loving others
Yeah.
and spreading that joy.
Well, we often refer to children in similar situations or whatever as special needs. I like to think of
Mhm.
them as special abilities.
Yes, yes,
So, and
absolutely.
you've described her very much as having a very empathetic heart, and
Hmm.
that's something we can all learn from her. Okay, that's great, and thank you for sharing that. It's amazing. Okay, well, what are some things that are your hopes and dreams for Tylee's future?
So the way that we parent her is that we try to allow her to do anything she wants to do that is safe, that we feel it would not be a hindrance to her developmentally. So
Okay,
if she wants to learn how to cook something, we give her a shot. We let her try as much as she possibly can. So I feel like we are on a track for her to be as independent as she wants to be. And whether that means that she just has a part-time job at some point in her adulthood, whether she's able to work a full-time job, I think she has enough skills that she could probably, once she gets out of high school, um, she has the ability to go on to a training program and probably hold down a full-time job. And so I don't I don't try to plan for her future in a way that probably a lot of special needs parents do, um, because at 13 years old, she's going to go through a lot of changes between now and the time that she gets out of high school. With a typical kid, you can probably at this point know maybe they're really gifted in math, maybe they're really gifted in science. Those are not the kind of things that we can predict about her. Like she may develop a skill where she's really fantastic with kids in a couple of years, or maybe she's really fantastic with the elderly. And so if she starts to lean into some sort of um, desire for something like that, we'll absolutely encourage her to be involved in a ministry or an opportunity to volunteer with a children's program or with an elderly program. So the church that we attend, they're very inclusive with Tylee. We've been so blessed that the youth group has just fully incorporated her. And
good.
so our teenagers, they do not go to Sunday school. Like they don't have a traditional Sunday school like a lot of congregations do. They serve during class, like when everybody else is in class. They serve. They'll either serve in the children's ministry, helping out with young kid classes. They help out in the nursery. They'll do a greeting. They'll be greeters at the door. They uh, also we have a ministry called Neighborhood Needs where they go over and they'll pack up groceries for families in need. And she's involved in all of those things. She gets
Okay,
to, we kind of choose where she's going to serve with our youth minister. But she helps out in the nursery and she loves doing that. She loves packing the groceries. She loves being a greeter. And so we try to observe her in different environments like that and just say, okay, well, that's something to just put away for the future, that if she really starts to have a desire to do that, we'll lean into that and try to put her on that path. She still operates more probably like a 7 or 8 year old. And so I don't think we're to the point yet where we can really start doing a lot of intense planning for her future. Other than that, we know if she has the ability to maybe have roommates or live in a group facility. If that's what she wants to do, she wants to have independence from us, and we feel it's safe, we'll absolutely let her do that.
Okay.
If she wants to live at home with us and have a job, we'll do that too. I mean, like
Mhm.
we're going to let her do what we feel is safe, but also allow her to make that choice when she gets to that age.
Okay. Great. I I like that you have a vision of the future for her, and that's healthy for her as well as for you guys. Well, let me ask another question. So there's going to be times when you have to kind of advocate for her for whatever reason. So how do you advocate for Tylee, let's say in a school setting or a healthcare setting? You've already mentioned, for example, there's some health history you just don't know. Um, and so
Yes.
answer that one, please. How do you advocate for her needs?
I, by nature, am not a timid person. So it comes naturally to me to advocate for her, and speak up for her. It's not a challenge for me at all. However, I know that's not the case for a lot of parents. But that is one thing that as a parent of a child with Down syndrome, you have to get past that timidity. You have to have that that spirit of boldness to do what you know is best for your child. And so very early on in her education, so every year as a special education child, she has a meeting. It's an IEP in the state of Texas. It's also called an ARD meeting, but it's where
Mm-hmm.
you set up their individualized education
Mm-hmm.
program,
Mm-hmm.
so that she can get the services and the classes and things that are most beneficial to her. So early on in her education, we were having that meeting, and you meet with speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, any of those therapy services that are involved in her IEP. A representative is there. Whoever the therapist is that services her is there. And the speech therapist was telling me that they were trying to teach her sign language. I have no problem with children that need sign language to communicate, to learn that. However, I know that Tylee is capable of speech. I know that she is capable of learning words and to communicate with speech. So I very firmly but kindly asked them to stop um, teaching her sign language until she masters speech. And I
Okay.
told them, I'm okay with her learning some signs, maybe to encourage her to communicate with kids that do rely on that. However, her priority needs to be speech, needs to be
Okay.
spoken word communication. And, until she masters those goals, sign language is not to be part of her goals. And
Okay.
so that's, that educationally, that is just something that was important to me. You have to let them know the things that are the most important to you, that are the most valuable to you. They also tend to um, push life skills for kids that are in special education. And to me, I can teach her how to push a broom at home. I don't need
Okay.
her to learn how to push a broom at school. Academics are what's important to me and our family. And so if she were on a level where academics were not going to be beneficial for her in the future, I would be more okay with life skills. But I want to focus on her learning the academics. I want her to be able to do basic math and make change for dollar bills and, things like that. And so that's something that I've always requested, is that they lean more into academics and less life skills for her. And so far we haven't had any trouble with that. But you know, recently with there was another one I was going to tell you about where this is this is another thing I did. In fact, this week. So there are, in the state of Texas, there was a grant that parents of special needs kids could apply for, and I had a misunderstanding of what it was. I thought it was, we were applying for a grant and then they would give that money to her classroom for educational supplies. That's not what it was. It was that parents can order educational supplies for home use as well. And so like we got her, dice that form sentences. So she tosses the dice and it comes up with words and she needs to form a sentence with those words. She's got math games, like board games that are math related, that are grammar related, things like that. So we got to order some of those things. Well, one of the things that I'd ordered for her was a baby doll that has Down syndrome, but it didn't come with any clothes. So I put in an order for some clothes for the baby doll, and they declined it and told me it had no educational value. And I sent an email back and I said, actually, my child has Down syndrome. She gets occupational therapy where her goals are dexterity in her fingers and the ability to, build on those motor skills. So these clothes for her baby doll absolutely have educational value for her. And I asked them to reconsider, and they did, and they approved it. So I was able to get those clothes for her baby doll for her to have that. So it's things like that you don't often even think about needing to advocate for. But at the same time, it's like if something happens to her, somebody says something to her and it frustrates you, you go, I need, you have to make the judgment call, of course, but you're like, maybe this is something that I do need to step in on and advocate for. So, and honestly, when we first started going to the church that we are now, we had I had a lot of communication early on with the youth minister because I did want her to be included in the youth group just as a regular participant. And he's been very open about it. I mean, like they're taking her on spring retreat. She'll get to go to summer camp just like all the other kids, which is not always the case because people are so fearful of being responsible for a child that has special needs. But, when you work together with the people who are willing, it can be so rewarding for everyone that's involved.
Okay. That's fascinating. I agree with you 100% about those clothing for that baby doll. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Well, the podcast is about helping folks discover, sustain, or regain hope. And I can imagine that a parent that has the news they're going to have a child that has Down syndrome or maybe adopt one or whatever, there are going to be challenges to their hope. So how does your relationship with Tylee help you to be able to help others in their challenges to hope?
Just being that our situation is a little different, Tylee actually was my hope. She was my answered prayer because we went through infertility and, we're never able to have our own children. And, even finding out about her and them including the bit about her having Down syndrome, I was like, that means nothing to me. Like that's a child that needs a mother and I need a child. I'm a mother that needs a child. And so, so my situation is just a little bit different. However, I do know that there are a lot of people who feel a lot of sadness. There is a sense of hopelessness. There's so much fear that goes into it because there are, first of all, historically, people have been used to seeing Down syndrome people who are just pushed to the wayside or not given a lot of opportunities. Like those are things that have changed so much over the years, though. But like you said, a lot of people don't have exposure to people with Down syndrome just in daily life. So it's hard to know there is hope. There are programs for them. There are avenues for them to have a career, to be successful, have a job, to have relationships and friendships, valuable friendships. But that is so far, even as far as we've come, that is not the standard face of Down syndrome yet. People still have so much fear because it's not the standard to push that, to show that. So I everybody that I have ever met who has either a prenatal diagnosis or has a new baby that has Down syndrome, I'm like, let me tell you, the very first thing to not listen to is anybody who tells you, I'm sorry.
Mm.
Don't listen to that.
Mm-hmm.
You listen to the people who are excited for you, who are celebrating with you, who know that baby is going to have a good life, because there's nothing. You're still raising a baby. It's still a child who has needs, and you're meeting those basic needs. They may look a little bit different, but that's nothing to be sorry for. You know, if you lose your baby, if you experience the loss of your child, that's when you say I'm sorry, not because there are challenges. And there are so many programs and so many resources that people can get involved in, or research that they can read. There are organizations worldwide that cater to families that have Down syndrome children. And it is amazing how quickly you fall into pace with those people when you meet them, because it is not often that you run across another parent, run across a parent that has a typical child that is incredibly relatable. There may be some similarities in the way that you raise your children, but it's just different. And when you meet somebody that has a child that has Down syndrome, there's an instant connection.
Sure.
And it brings a lot of peace, because a lot of the people that you meet either have, they have kids that are older than your kids. So you can kind of glean their knowledge, glean from their experience and their wisdom and that. And then you also have the confidence to pass that on to people who have children younger than yours. And you're like, oh, yep, we went through that, And so it's nice to just have that community and that connection with people. And so that's something else I always tell people that I meet who have very young children with Down syndrome, is to plug into your local Down syndrome organization.
Wow.
Because they will be there for you. They'll be able to answer questions for you. Like I said, a lot of our kids have, weak lungs or other, immune deficiencies, things like that. And it's scary at times. And at 2:00 in the morning, when your kid is having trouble breathing, a lot of times you can't you're either going to have to go to the ER, or maybe you have a connection to a close friend who has a child that has Down syndrome. You can text them or you can call them and be like, hey, is this normal? Is this something I should worry about? And so it's nice to just be able to have that community and that resource at your fingertips. And I say get involved as early as you possibly can. Because I've not met a person on the planet who doesn't just immediately fall in love with a baby that has Down syndrome. They're just the cutest thing you've ever seen. And so, it's easy to plug in. There's always going to be somebody who's willing to talk to you and help and give some encouragement.
I've picked up on some things that you've said that I teach about hope. One of them is you are not alone. And
Absolutely.
you've communicated that very well. Another is that get out of yourself. It's too easy to have that feeling sorry for oneself or whatever, and no, get out of yourself. And one way to do that is to help with others as well. So now those are just some things that I picked up on it that I teach, and so you've communicated those very well. Wow.
Yeah, you can. It's very easy to stay down about a challenging situation. It's very easy to stay in yourself and but the thing about that is that when you limit yourself, you limit your child as well, because you don't provide them the opportunities that they need to be successful, because you're doubting them. That's one of the other really big things that I try to encourage people to not do is don't compare your child that has Down syndrome to a typical child, and don't compare them to another child that has Down syndrome. Because, like I said earlier, it's such a spectrum. Your Down syndrome child is not going to meet the milestones the same time my Down syndrome child did. And they're definitely not going to meet the same as a typical child. And getting caught in that cycle of comparing your child to any other child is really detrimental to their development. And Like, you just have to focus on what they can accomplish right then, and, set goals and stick to those goals, and don't be swayed by somebody else's goals for their kid. Uh, just stay away from the comparison game, because it's hurtful, not just for you, but for your kid too.
Yeah. That was another thing I picked up on as you, not only in the last comments, but previous comments, were a lot of the things that you expressed about Tylee are some of the same things all of us as parents express. We have these hopes and dreams for our children, and we're working to determine a pathway forward for that child and to be there for that child to support that. Hey, by the way, you wrote a book about Tylee. What is the title
I
of
did.
that book?
It is called The Extraordinary Sky.
The Extraordinary what?
Sky, Skye, based on actual things that Tylee has done, her reactions to things. Um, it just, the goal of that book is really to introduce very young children to Down syndrome, to what it
Okay.
means. The illustrations, I tried to be very, as realistic as I could be with the illustrations, to make it come across that, there are physical characteristics of someone with Down syndrome that you can recognize very easily. And, so that if they do see a child that has Down syndrome, they can recognize that, and they can remember to treat them with kindness, that they, when they speak, they may speak a little slower. They may be a little harder to understand. And so it just encourages them to be kind, and to be patient with them, and that they are just kids, just like everybody else. They want to be invited to the parties. They want to have friends, and they want to, be silly. They make messes. That they love to play at the park, just like all the other kids do. And so it just introduces that. It's targeted to very young children. And then in the back of that book also, just because, like you said earlier, not everyone has exposure to children with Down syndrome all the time. And kids may ask a question about a child with Down syndrome that a typical adult is not going to know how to answer without Google. And so what I did in the back of that book is I did a couple of pages of just Q&A, where I took questions that would be very common for a young child to ask in relation to Down syndrome. And I provided the answers to those common questions, just so that adults don't have to be put on the spot and not know the answer. Something that is very commonly asked is, like, Tylee's very flexible. Most children with Down syndrome are very flexible. It is due to a medical issue. It's not really an issue, but they have very low muscle tone, and it makes them very flexible. Their ligaments are really flexible, and so she can spread her legs all the way apart and lay her head flat down on the floor with no problems whatsoever. And they'll ask, like, how does she do that, or why does she do that? And so I just give some responses to some common questions like that, just so that the adults can be prepared to answer those if the kids have those.
Okay. Well, I'm going to put a link to that in the
Okay.
show notes. Rene, I have enjoyed this. You have been a wonderful guest. You have brought out some incredibly valuable information, and I'm glad that you're willing to share that. But we've always thought that you guys were very special for your willingness to adopt Tylee, and I thank you for that. Thank you for your
Yeah,
time of being on this podcast, and
of
I look
course. Thank
forward
you for
to
inviting me.
I look
I
forward to
appreciate
getting some
it.
good comments from it. So, okay, great.
One thing I've always said is, anybody who wants to be a parent and parents a child with Down syndrome, people are going to tell you they'll live with you forever. You'll always have to support them. But I encourage you to keep in mind that um, it's a blessing to have them forever than to never have them at all.
Uh-huh.
And that is how I've always felt about her. And I wouldn't change a single thing about it. I know that she'll be with me forever, and I welcome that.
Okay.
So it's just, yeah, it's how we have always looked at our experiences. We'd rather have her forever than never have her at all.
Well, I
So
have always heard, again, I don't know the validity of it. I've just always heard that if you're looking for a child that likes to express love, a Down syndrome child has a phenomenal capacity to show love. And
absolutely.
that's always a welcome thing in a family. Okay, we need more of it. Okay.
I agree.
All right. Well, let me wrap up. Well, thank you for joining Rene and I as together we journey to hope. I trust in some small way we have encouraged you to discover, sustain, or perhaps regain hope. I invite you to contact me if you have any questions or comments, or if you wish to share with me something you've experienced in your journey to hope. My email is info@ourjourneytohope. That's info@ourjourneytohope. And please share this podcast with someone whose hope is being challenged. I look forward to sharing more with you soon. Again, I'm Dr. Dave Layton, and thank you for listening. And until our next episode, remember, we give all glory to God our Father.